So in this video, I would now like to help you break yourself down and look at not just yourself, but human beings as a race of people in a very, very holistic way. What I want to suggest here is that there are 5 ways in which we experience life. Like, granted, this course is themed around the cognitive approach, right? What happens inside of our minds, how we process our day-to-day events and experiences, cognitive biases, cognitive distortions, beliefs, worldviews, perceptions, all of these things. Now, the sciences are absolutely fascinating. There are multiple schools of thought that include the psychodynamic school of thought, the likes of Sigmund Freud. You've got the humanistic school of thought, guys like Abraham Maslow. You've got the cognitive school of thought. You've got the behavioral school of thought. You've got the person-centered school of thought. You've got the biological school of thought. You've got multiple schools of thought. And what each of these scientific, psychological schools of thought will do is they will focus in on one aspect of the human experience, all right? Now, I pretty much became very, very aware of this when I was studying psychology as part of the social sciences. I wanted to get a really broad overview of all of the psychological schools of thought without fully subscribing to one. I wanted to really get this holistic understanding so that I could then focus in on what it was that naturally intrigued me the most, which incidentally happened to be the cognitive rational school of thought and also the behavioral just a little bit. But look at this. The cognitive behavioral therapy kind of brings 2 schools of thought together, doesn't it? The cognitive school of thought just focuses on the mind. It suggests that the mind is kind of like a computer. What goes in determines what comes out. The behavioral school of thought asks questions such as, how are we conditioned? Are individuals, is individual behavior determined or influenced by society? Or how does this work? Right? It just asks a different set of questions. So the reason I'm kind of telling you all this is to really encourage you to look at life in this holistic way. Now, I'm using a word here that many of the psychologies won't acknowledge, right? I'm using the word spiritual here. And it's not because I'm a spiritualist or anything like this. I just don't know what other word to use, all right? So let's look at life in 5 different levels. First things first, physical. We experience life physically. Sometimes you might have clients as a CBT practitioner who will have all sorts of problematic cognitions going on because of a physical issue that they have with a physical body, i.e. a disformity. They might be grossly overweight, and this is triggering all sorts of destructive thought patterns and consequential emotions and all this sort of thing. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes a person might be overweight or might overindulge or drink too much or smoke too much or take too many drugs or gamble too much or work too much because they're trying to be successful to fill a void. Once or twice throughout the course so far, I've given a reference to this. You know this itch we can't scratch? Have you ever wondered what it is that really drives you in life? You know, why are you driven? What are you really taking this course for? Like, really? What is it you really want? Have you ever woken up one day and said, you know what? I am fulfilled. I'm completely content. I don't need to do anything anymore. I don't even want to do anything else with my life. I just feel full. This is kind of what being fulfilled is. I feel completely fulfilled. Doesn't matter if I do more, get more, ascertain more, accomplish more, achieve more. Enough's enough. I've never met a human being throughout my 40 years of existence who said, you know what, for me, enough is just enough. I know people who've made millions and lost millions. There's a guy who lives around about 40 miles north of me here in Scotland, an American guy, calls himself the $50 billion man because he's amassed over $50 billion worth of financial wealth over the years. And the question I ask myself sometimes is, when will enough be enough? When will enough actually ever be enough? And when enough isn't enough, well, what is it that we're actually trying to fill? How would we know when enough is enough? When we've got enough healthy relationships, when we have enough money in the bank, when we have enough knowledge, when we have enough insight, understanding, when we've helped enough people, when will enough be enough? And what I'm saying here is, like, sometimes we go through life trying desperately to fill a void, don't we? Can you relate to what I'm talking about? Some people will look to overcompensate in areas in life that they feel in which they lack. There's an interesting idea. I've taught this in some of the other courses, and it's that we experience confidence on multiple levels, all right? Some people draw their confidence in life from how knowledgeable they are. Some people draw their confidence in life from how articulate and clearly spoken they are. Some people draw their confidence in life from how much money they have in the bank. Some people draw their confidence in life from how good looking and handsome they are. Some people draw their confidence in life from social performance. And by this, they'll be very, very confident in the heart and soul of a party, but then when alone in isolation by themselves, they're absolute gibbering wrecks. Some people draw their confidence in life from their core identity, from the truth of who they are, from their state of authentic being, all right? And the reason I say these things is because we're all driven by something, all right? And we're going to really explore and unpack this concept in the core values section, which I know you're going to find to be absolutely eye-opening. All right, what I'm going to be bold enough to say here is that we all have this spiritual core, all right? Now, this is a conversation I've had with many people in the past. A lot of people go through life pursuing spirituality, kind of like it's a thing. I want a spiritual experience. I want to be more spiritual. And it's kind of like, okay, well, we're either fully physical or we're fully spiritual. Or we're all of these things. I mean, have you ever looked into a person's eyes in their dying moments? Now, this is an experience that I've had, and this isn't something that's ever going to get printed in the psychological textbooks. I'm sharing with you a real-life human experience, all right? So I'm not going to theorize about this, but I've been in the company of people in the dying moments of their lives, all right? 1 minute they're there in body, they're there in thought, they're there in volition, they're there emotionally, they're there in spirit. Then the next minute, they're gone. And all that's left is body. Everything else is gone. Emotion's gone. Rational's gone. Volitional's gone. Spiritual's gone. It's all gone. All that's left is body, and then body rots. I mean, what happens when we die? Have you ever considered this? Like, what actually happens? Now, this is quite an abstract idea, but it's good to think like this sometimes, isn't it? I mean, what actually happens when we die? What part of us leaves? Where does it go? I mean, these are big concerns that a lot of people have. They're questions that around about 99.999% of the world population will ask at some point. Whether they're ready to ask it today or whether they're not, it's irrelevant. Everyone is going to find this question relevant at some point in their lives, all right? And there's a pretty good chance, as a cognitive behavioural therapist, you're going to encounter quite a few of them. So it's good to go there and just ponder over these ideas first. Trust me, I've been caught out with some absolutely corking questions over the years, all right? So I'm going to boldly state that where many people go through life looking to have some sort of spiritual experience, what I'm going to say is that we're all spiritual beings. All growth is spiritual. All human growth is spiritual. Now, how do we know this is true? Because I've known many guys over the years, especially through the army, who would spend hours every single day down the gym, pumping up the biceps and the quadriceps and their biceps, and they've got 6 packs here and 12 packs over here and muscles popping out their necks and all this kind of stuff, but yet they still continue to conduct themselves like emotional infants. It's one thing building up our physical bodies, and it's one thing building up the intellect in our minds, but then it's something building ourselves up in character, in substance. What does personal growth actually mean for you? Is growth just building up your physical body, or is it building up your emotions if you can do that? What's physical growth? Is it becoming more rational, becoming more knowledgeable, becoming smarter, or is it making more choices? Or is personal growth something to do about who we are at the core, at the heart, and in spirit? What I'm going to say is that we're all spiritual beings having a very physical experience. All right. Now, again, this isn't something that will generally make it into the psychology textbooks, but this is human experience, so it can't be disacknowledged. All right, we've got to look at life in this holistic way. We're all having a spiritual experience. Right now, you're having a spiritual experience. You're going to be responding in a certain way to what I'm saying here, positively, negatively, and that's going to be based upon what it is that you've chosen to believe and think and what your worldviews are. You've arrived at this throughout the course of your lifetime to date. All right? What I'm going to say here is, at the core, in our heart, right inside of us, this is where our beliefs live. Now, Sigmund Freud, from the psychoanalytical school of thought, he referred to this model, all right, not in this way, but he said that life is kind of like an iceberg. And I've already mentioned this, I think back in section 1 of the course. We have these different levels of experience. We have conscious thought, we have subconscious thought, and then we have unconscious thought, all right? I'm going to say that for most people, they go through life being unconsciously spiritual, all right? Where they know they're feeling down in the dumps, they know they're feeling absolutely lifeless, they're alive, but yet they're walking around kind of like the Walking Dead, all right? Alive in body, but dead in spirit. Now, I know you can relate to that, all right? There's a pretty good chance you know someone who lives life like this, but yet they choose nothing different. Let me just remind you of this saying once again. People in life tend to not choose to change until the desire to change becomes greater than the desire to remain the same. It's when we become more aware of ourselves and we hang about. I'm absolutely sick and tired of feeling the way that I feel here. I can wait for someone to try and change me or something to change me, or I can choose to do something about my emotional state. A great example, I think I gave reference to the story earlier on as well, was a young lady that I was working with in a coaching, CBT-based context a number of years ago, and she defined herself as being depressed, and the doctor had said, yes, you're depressed, and he'd even been kind enough to give her some medication. But guess what the drug's done? Absolutely nothing. Drugs done zip. Why? Because given a person who's struggling with an emotion, some form of medication is like putting a sticky plaster over an infected wound. Granted, you might be taking away some short-term symptoms, but you're certainly not dealing with the infection that lies beneath the surface. And what I'm going to say here is that where most people become infected, in the way in which I'm talking about here, is on a spiritual level. When they go on to believe unhelpful, inaccurate things about themselves. Say, I'm not capable of being any more than how I'm being right now. I'm not wise enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I couldn't do that. Me create. What? Me start my own business? What? Me actually make a difference in someone else's life? I couldn't do that. Garbage. Those beliefs are like poison that hold many people back in life. Those are the beliefs that we want to be helping people to elicit and extract and review as CBT practitioners. Because as long as a person's operating out of a set of beliefs like this, they'll never move. Some people will remain in the same place, going around the same circles, conforming to the same sets of destructive thought patterns and behavioural patterns and actions and behaviours and habits for anything up to a lifetime. And then they reach that age of 65 years old, isolated in a place of despair. My goodness, I've really screwed my life up. Personal growth happens here. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with going down the gym and pumping up your biceps and doing a few, back exercises and stuff like that. But the one thing that's guaranteed is that we're all going south, all right? None of us are getting any younger, all right? This is great when we're young. We can, show off to members of the same sex or the opposite sex, whatever way we're inclined. But pumping up our physical bodies for some people is just another overcompensation for people who feel insecure, not confident within themselves at the core. People will use choices, they'll use academia, they'll use their own physical appearance. Why is it you think that many young ladies today get surgery and operations on themselves? Here in the UK, we walk through some of the cities and some of the girls, they'll walk around looking like Donald Duck, if you've ever seen that, with their lips pumped out here. They've had all sorts of chemicals injected into their lips. They look like, like rubber things. They're absolutely crazy, all in the attempt of being beautiful. Why do some people want to prove themselves and make themselves out to be beautiful? I guess because at the core, they're ill. They're spiritually incomplete. They've got a void here, this itch that they don't know how to scratch. And this is where personal growth comes into play. When we start becoming aware of who we actually are, but also who we aren't. Because unless we have an accurate picture of ourselves, who we actually are, what we're capable of, then we might spend the rest of our lives making decisions in response to how we feel or what we think, which could sometimes be 1,000,001 miles away from that which is actually true. All growth is spiritual. All growth is spiritual. All growth is in character. All growth is in substance. We grow in character and in substance when we grow in awareness of who we are and what we're capable of. So who are you? What are you capable of? What aren't you capable of? And when did you decide that? Who told you? Is it the case that someone might have led you down the garden path at some point in your past? What ideas, what patterns of thought have you subscribed to on a rational level? How is it that the quality of your thinking today is impacting the outcomes and the results that you're actually walking in today? And how do you feel about this? What itch are you trying to scratch? What drives you? What are you trying to fulfill? Have you ever wondered what it is that would actually fulfill you in life? You know when you get there. You know how everyone's working towards getting there in life. Now we're just having a dialogue here. We're having a conversation. I want to make this course real for you, not just a whole load of empty information in academia. Why? Because if you can relate to this stuff, then guess what? You're going to be able to better relate to other people because they're going to be able to better relate to you. So what's driving you? What's in your core? What is it that would ultimately fulfill you someday? Do you even know what that is? Because we're all working towards something. Life will be better when we get there. Life's never enough right here. This is all our perception, isn't it? So, abstract video, right? I make no qualms for this. Because we experience life on 5 different levels. Physically, emotionally, rationally, volitionally, spiritually, but as one. And this is where sometimes studying any one school of psychological thought can end up doing us a real disservice because we might end up focusing purely on the biological self, on the physical, or we might focus mainly on person-centered, on the emotional. And this is where many counselling schools focus primarily. Let's look at a person's emotional experience. Let's talk about how they feel. But the problem with this is that what we focus on, we magnify, we feel even more. So if we're focusing on hurtful events in the past, then guess what? We're going to feel it. We can end up leading people round and round in circles. So yes, it's good to touch on the physical. Yes, it's good to acknowledge the emotional, but for a purpose. Okay, how is the rational influencing the emotional? And what choices are we actually making here that are triggering the emotional and the physical outcomes that we're getting in life? Let us understand ourselves. And ultimately, what's driving us? What is driving the decisions that we make? What comes behind the decisions? Have you ever made a decision in your life at some point just to later say, oh my goodness, why did I do that? Well, this is all about us starting to understand. It's starting to look and see. And it's easy saying, I don't know. I just don't know why I do the things that I do sometimes. Well, of course you don't, because we experience life, as Sigmund Freud said, on 3 different levels. We have our conscious mind, which is full of information that's buzzing around right now, stuff that we're aware of, stuff we're conscious of. We have the subconscious mind. If I ask you what you had for breakfast this morning, you can probably remember. But if I asked you what you had for breakfast 3 weeks ago on Tuesday, you most likely can't remember because it was irrelevant. No emotional attachment to this experience. But if I ask you to recall the greatest hurt you've ever had, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a parent, a child, a brother, a sister, a best friend, of course you'll remember that. Why? Because it hurt you. And you mourned this. And it took something away from you. It broke your heart on a spiritual level. And this is why you remember it. There's no answers here, all right? There's no workbook for this one. Well, there is actually a little workbook, I tell a lie. There's a workbook you can download just to become better acquainted with yourself. That's what this section's all about. It's about self-awareness, all right? Know thyself, my friend. Take 5-10 minutes and just have a thorough look at yourself. All right, how does you experience life on those different levels, right? Are you the kind of person who's saying, no, there is no spiritual, I don't believe in that, there's only rational, there's only emotional, there's only physical? Nice one. So why so angry? Why the response? Where's that coming from? What's all that about? How do you know that you're right? How do you know that you're not wrong? Who told you? How would you know if you were being led down the garden path? Know thyself. My friend, these are the 5 levels of human experience. Download the workbook. There is a workbook. See, because we've got a little image here. And spend 5-10 minutes becoming better acquainted with yourself on this level. Because sometimes, as I've mentioned, some clients will come to you and they might talk about how they're feeling. But what you're going to be able to see is that their main issue isn't even necessarily going to be a cognitive one. It might be more of a spiritual issue where they're trying to fill some sort of need or void in their life, or it might be a physical issue or whatever. It's just good to have this holistic overview of the human experience, all right? As we do our best to better relate to our fellow human beings.